Doctor's Aim Agenda. With me now is Paul Browning, the headmaster at St Paul's School in Brisbane. Paul, thanks so much for your time. I know that in relation to the Gonski 2.0 debate, you believe one of the things that's been missing in large part is the view from the schools. So from your school in Brisbane, talk us through your view of where this debate's at right now.
I think it's really disappointing that we're always debating money when it comes to education, and that seems to get all the media coverage. What we really need to be talking about is our vision for education as we move into the future, and that's the missing piece in the debate.
In relation to the independent schools, though, and well-off schools, you can understand that perspective, but if it's a poor public school or other less well-off institution, you can understand why money would be forefront.
Of course you can, and I think this particular policy that the government has actually put on the table here will hopefully deal with this whole issue of fairness, inequity, and provide a funding model that is actually fair and transparent for all. But for me, that's not what the most important thing about education actually is. We really need to be talking about where we're actually heading as a nation. There's a lot of rhetoric around the fact that within the next decade, 50% of the jobs that we know of today will be gone, and they'll be replaced by new jobs that will need high levels of creativity, an entrepreneurial mindset, high levels of interpersonal skills. And these are the sorts of things that are missing from the debate. How are we preparing our children for the jobs of the future?
So what do you want seen injected into the debate then in relation to those jobs? As you say, for some of your youngest students at St Paul's, they will enter jobs when they finish school that we haven't even thought of yet.
Exactly, and of course it's always been the rhetoric, but the commentators are actually saying we're entering a period of change right now like none other than human history's ever seen. So for example, in Japan earlier in the year, there was an insurance company that had 35 employees, and they replaced 34 of those employees with artificial intelligence. We're seeing the transformation in the workplace across the whole globe. So really the question is, what are we preparing our children for? What is an education worth having? So it's really important that we actually are starting to talk about, well, what do we do in our schools to prepare young people for those jobs of the future that will arise out of these changes in the landscape that we're seeing?
And inherent in that is, what do we do to prepare the teachers to deliver that?
Well, again, it's important to focus on how we actually, or what are we actually asking our teachers to do? So often we get caught up with the whole notion of standardised testing, measuring the quality of our education with PISA, how are we actually going against other countries in the world, rather than actually looking at what as a nation are we really good at. And Australians are actually really good innovators. So how do we capitalise on that? How do we actually grow those skills? And at St Paul's School, we've had a huge focus on how do we actually instill creativity in young children? How do we actually create an entrepreneurial mindset and a spirit of innovation? And we've been doing a lot of professional development around those areas to support teachers to grow those capacities within the children, so when they leave school, they are prepared to actually create their own employment futures, and start their own businesses and make an impact.
Dr. Browning, just quickly, I know yours is an Anglican school, but finally, have you got any reflections on the debate around the Catholic sector, because they've been complaining that they've been hard done by?
Well, obviously when we talk about funding for schools in general, there's always going to be some winners and some losers, and it's really hard to actually appease everybody. I don't know the final detail for St Paul's School, and I don't know the detail around the Catholic schools and how they're working there, and I'll leave that to them to actually work out what they actually do. But for us, it's continually focusing on what is an education worth having. How do we prepare young people, and what do we do in our classrooms to support them?
Paul Browning from St Paul's, appreciate it. Thanks for that. We're going to go